Celebrities have been involved in the wrestling industry for decades now, and while sometimes they are an unwanted distraction, they've often proven to have had worth and added to the product too. When they decide to actually step in the ring and wrestle, however, is where things start to get a little tricky and can go very badly indeed. Especially if, they end up winning the World Heavyweight title. But there have been many instances of those from Hollywood, pro sports, and beyond doing the business and themselves proud. So let's celebrate that, shall we? Because celebrities simply don't get enough attention, if you ask me. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 best celebrity wrestling matches. Lights, camera, grappling. Number 10, Ric Flair and Arn Anderson versus Steve McMichael and Kevin Greene. Sometimes wrestling just needs to be fun, especially when celebrities are involved in matches, because you're not going to get some Dean Malenko technical classic or something. Fun is exactly what Ric Flair and Arn Anderson's 1996 Great American Bash tag match with NFL players Kevin Greene and Steve Mongo McMichael was. They kept things simple, with the football lads concentrating on nailing their cues and getting over via sheer force of personality. The Nature Boy and the Enforcer, for their part, did everything they could to make their opponents look like stars, bumping all over the place and guiding them through it as it progressed. There was plenty of gaga too, with Mongo's co-commentator Bobby Heenan running around, Randy Savage stationed at ringside to play cheerleader, and a crafty finish that saw Mongo turn on his mate and join up with Flair and Anderson in the Horsemen. Amazingly good considering the experience level of the babyface team, this was long but never really dragged and stands as one of the better examples of athletes from another sport trying their hand at pro wrestling. Number 9, Shaquille O'Neal and Jade Cargill versus Cody Rhodes and Red Velvet. It always helps when the celebrity involved has a genuine affection and respect for the business. Shaq certainly falls into that category, as his pro wrestling fandom is well known. He had been affiliated with WWE for years, and it looked like at one point there would eventually be a colossal showdown between him and Big Show, something that they had teased several times in the past. It wasn't to be though, and the NBA legend's first proper bout went down on the March 3rd, 2021 episode of AEW Dynamite. Shaq teamed with newcomer Jade Cargill to take on Cody and Red Velvet in an intergender tag match to kick off the episode. All eyes were on the 7-footer as he squared off with the American Nightmare, hitting him with some big moves, including a massive powerbomb that featured a nice tribute to the late Brody Lee. The highlight of the bout, however, was Shaq unexpectedly taking a big bump backwards off the ring apron through 2 tables at ringside after being bundled over by a charging Cody. It was more than anyone expected him to do and truly demonstrated his passion for the business, as well as the reverence with which he treated his opportunity to have a match. He's still looking for Mr. White, however. Number 8, D'Angelo Williams and Moose versus Eli Drake and Chris Adonis. Undeterred by a very negative experience with the troublesome Adam Pac-Man Jones, Impact Wrestling booked the not-long-retired running back D'Angelo Williams for a tag match at their big 2017 Slammiversary pay-per-view. Williams teamed with another former football player, Moose, to take on Eli Drake and Chris Adonis, formerly Masters, in a doubles bout that featured one of the best first-time wrestling performances ever. Of particular note was D'Angelo's ultra-smooth hot tag that tore the house down, as the longtime fan looked like a total pro out there, hitting moves with fluency and accuracy that belied his 3 days of training. Yes, 3 days. He nailed some great-looking strikes, a version of the Code Breaker, a Samoan drop, and a standing moonsault in quick succession, which had fans and critics raving. Alright, so he overshot the finishing frog splash through a table and nearly broke his neck in the process, but chalked that up to a mixture of inexperience, adrenaline, and exuberance. It certainly didn't take away from what had been a fine showing in what is, to date, Williams' first and only pro wrestling match. Number 7, Stephen Amell and Neville versus Bad News Barrett and Stardust. Arrow star Stephen Amell is quite clearly a fan of the business, having had matches in WWE, Ring of Honor, and at the All In pay-per-view. Once again, the heel star's genuine enthusiasm and passion shone through in his first match, which took place at SummerSlam 2015 and came about thanks to his relationship with Cody Rhodes, who at that time was portraying the craptacular Stardust. Amell teamed with Neville to take on Stardust and Bad News Barrett in a fine mid-card outing that got 3 deserving performers onto the card and made great use of the celebrity elements. The things he did best was selling, as he was isolated for the bulk of the contest before hitting a few select moves and finishing off his night with a big dive from the top rope to the outside. Neville got the pin following a red arrow, so the emphasis was on him at the end, but Amell gave a good account of himself and was said to have impressed many backstage with his performance and overall conduct. His first singles match in 2018 against the ever-dependable Christopher Daniels was also pretty damn decent and further demonstrated his aptitude for the grap game. Number 6, Lawrence Taylor vs Bam Bam Bigelow. As a WrestleMania main event, Lawrence Taylor vs Bam Bam Bigelow doesn't really cut the mustard, especially not to a fan born in the UK who had no clue who LT was. But as a first match for a celebrity, in a high-pressure situation, it absolutely does the job. For WrestleMania 11, WWE were going all out with the famous folks in order to generate more interest in their flagging product, drafting in the likes of Pamela Anderson and Jenny McCarthy for added sizzle, while booking the controversial LT in the headliner. The angle leading into the show was decent, and the match laid out thoroughly ahead of time, with agent and layout specialist Pat Patterson on hand as special guest referee as an insurance policy in case the gridiron grate got lost or the match otherwise fell apart. Thankfully though, it didn't, and Taylor hit all of his marks as the Beast from the East controlled the pace and walked him through it. LT was blown up worse than the building in a Bruce Willis movie come the end, and probably couldn't have gone another 20 seconds, but he got to the finish line and didn't embarrass himself or WWE en route to victory with a second rope forearm smash. Number 5, Dennis Rodman and Hulk Hogan vs Lex Luger and the Giants. Erratic, unpredictable, and certainly not cheap, WCW's decision to feature NBA standout Dennis Rodman was a risky one that could have blown up in their faces at any moment. The flamboyant Rodzilla was affiliated with the New World Order and worked a handful of matches for Ted Turner's promotion, including a tag match with rival from the courts Karl Malone and a singles meeting with Randy Savage in Sturgis. Perhaps his best outing was his first, teaming with Hulk Hogan to take on Lex Luger and the Giants in the main event of the 1997 Bash at the Beach. Rodman had charisma and was an athlete with a controversial public image that guaranteed that he would receive strong reactions, which he got by performing simple moves like an arm drag and leapfrog. It wasn't a tremendous match or particularly worthy pay-per-view main event, but the Chicago Bull was the star and didn't look out of place in the environment. His presence also added much heat, and though Hogan did the job, they got their steam back after the fact, and when the show went off the air, the image of them two sweeting with Randy Savage was the one that viewers were left with. Number 4, Bad Bunny and Damian Priest versus The Miz and John Morrison. Well, this was a pleasant surprise, wasn't it? Global hip-hop sensation Bad Bunny and WWE took advantage of the pandemic to work together and get him in a match at WrestleMania while his tour was postponed. He initially caught the attention of the wider WWE audience with his music video for the song Booker T, named after and featuring the Hall of Famer himself. From there, he began an association with Damian Priest and feuded with Miz and Morrison, leading to the granddaddy of them all. It's noted that Bunny is a lifelong fan of wrestling, and it showed because he took the task at hand and gave it absolutely everything in his big moments. His selling was on point when taking a beating, his crowd interaction work was great, and it's not every day a guest from another industry hits a Canadian destroyer on the floor. This was a home run all over because Miz, Morrison and Priest got the rub from working with the mainstream megastar, while Bad Bunny himself got to realize a dream and impress fans, critics and wrestlers alike. Number 3, Floyd Mayweather versus The Big Show. When WWE originally booked Floyd Mayweather versus a returning Big Show at WrestleMania 24 and kicked off the feud with a powerful angle at the prior month's No Way Out, they envisioned a classic David versus Goliath tale, with the diminutive boxer playing the underdog hero. But Money Mayweather is a natural heel, and soon enough the script was flipped and the undefeated sensation became the bad guy. This greatly improved the eventual match, which was one of the main events of a stacked Mania card and generated significant interest in the sports media world. The world's largest athlete dominated their no disqualification clash, throwing Mayweather around at will before disposing of his pesky entourage. In the end though, the numbers game was too much, and all the distractions allowed Floyd to crack Show with a chair before knocking him out cold with a loaded right hand. This did its job and then some. Mayweather played his part perfectly, perfectly and was game for taking bumps, Big Show wasn't harmed in the loss, and the freak show nature of the exhibition surely put more eyes on the WWE product. Number 2, Mr. T and Hulk Hogan versus Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff. With a casual audience in mind, as much as established wrestling fans themselves, the emphasis at the first WrestleMania was certainly on the entertainment aspect, and the event was full of special celebrity guests. Chief among them was Mr. T, then at the height of his fame on the back of the A-Team and his memorable turn in Rocky III. The pitier of fools was aligned with Golden Goose Hulk Hogan, helping the Hulkster battle mortal enemy Rowdy Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff, with Cowboy Bob Orton and Jimmy Snuka situated at ringside. The main event of the inaugural WrestleMania, this was basic but had so much heat and worked exactly as it should have done. Muhammad Ali was stationed at ringside as the outside referee, while trusty Pat Patterson was inside to make sure everything went as it should. He may have also been in there to make sure that things didn't escalate between Mr. T and Piper, who genuinely did not like each other. T didn't do much, but he didn't have to, sticking to slams, clotheslines, hit tosses, an airplane spin, and some mat wrestling. Come to think of it, that pretty much describes the offense of about half the WWE stars from the time, so it's really no wonder that Clubber Lang fit in so seamlessly. The babyfaces prevailed, the ringside photographers got their snaps, and everyone went home happy. Number 1, Pat McAfee versus Adam Cole. Pat McAfee is great, isn't he? And I really hope there's an eventual return to the ring for the former pro football punter turned WWE commentator, because he was one of the great surprises of 2020, having not one but 2 memorable matches. The War Games scrap from December was a better overall match, but as far as McAfee's individual is concerned, his debut against Adam Cole at TakeOver 30 turned the most heads. Another lifelong fan of the business, Pat had clearly been training, knew what to do, and took the task seriously. He also got to show off his athleticism with a big dive to the outside, as well as a spot where he backflipped off the top rope, landed on his feet, and then ran back up the turnbuckles to hit Cole with a superplex. It wasn't just the moves though, because Pat also sold and worked the camera like a pro. He was no doubt helped by his accomplished dance partner, but McAfee showed enough to suggest there could be many more matches in his future if he wishes to do them.